Happy New Year and welcome to Caged Minds Uncensored. A shout out to Mac 10. And this new year, we're going to start out in an old fashion. Let's welcome in Sal Mora for this week. How you doing, Sal?
Doing good. How are you, Micah? Happy
I'm
New Year.
great. I'm great. Happy New Year. How was your New Year?
Oh, it was quiet, man. I'm getting over a cold, and so I actually stood home, relaxed, did a whole lot of nothing. It was a good day to wake up. No hangover, no issues, no who is next to me. It was nice.
I did some Netflix binge watching, but yeah, no craziness. No craziness.
Getting old, like you just said. We're kind of going throwback, so yeah, I'm getting older every year.
Right. But also there was an excitement this weekend because we finally closed out a big year of MMA. We had UFC 219. You watched the event, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you had two throwback fighters that I'm familiar with, and Carlos Condit from here, and of course the main event, Holly Holm. And I wanted to see how they would perform inside the cage, and they both did. Well, one did surprisingly more better than what I performed, more better than what I thought she was going to. The other one, I don't know. I still can't chalk it up if it's rust or if time passes by.
Man, does he care? Do you think Carlos Condit cares? I gotta ask.
I don't know. Leading up to this, and that's what I was telling people. I was like, I don't know if, because everybody was like, oh, Carlos is going to come back. He's going to beat Neil. And I said, well, there's key things that he's saying in interviews that are always red flags. Oh, I don't know if this is going to be one and done. I went into the gym, and I looked good, and I felt good in the gym, so that's why I kind of wanted to come back. It was never a full hunger to be back. It didn't seem like. And it showed. It showed he was a step behind in everything that on Saturday night. And I don't know if he cares. I don't know if he's just making money to fund his coffee company that he's working on. So I don't know. I mean, those are questions he's got to ask himself. Would I like to see him one more time in the cage? Yes. Only because if it was just cage rust and it being off and his timing being off, because there's one thing that looked great when you're in sparring, when you're in hitting the bag, when you're hitting mitts. It's a whole nother level that you got to be able to turn on when you're inside the cage, when you're in the boxing ring. You have to be able to turn it on to that level, and it just seemed like he was still in sparring training mode, and that's what you saw on Saturday night from Carlos. Now, again, that could be the year that he took off, year or so that he took off, and we could all just be saying, oh, this was just a speed bump, no big deal, moving forward. But that's why I want to see him one more time in the cage.
If he feels he wants one more time in the cage, I guess so. But at this point, the last two times he's looked shell-shocked and out of sorts and not really there and not really wanting to be there and going through the motions. If that's the Carlos Condit we're going to get, go on with your side business. Thank you. You're a legend. You did a lot of great stuff. I love you. But let's not just go money grabbing because you might get hurt if you're not fully into this. None the sort also being handled by a much inferior fighter. And I'll say that's what I thought Neil Magny was. That's why it was, if Carlos is really back, if this is a second run, if he really wants to fight, then he's going to win. But he got handled in a way that doesn't make it look like this is a second coming.
Yeah, I mean, I can see your point of view as well. And yeah, zero takedown defense. And again, you don't know. Maybe he had an injury. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. These guys don't always say the whole story. Could it, to you, to me, to everybody else around here, could it be a money grab? Possibly. And I thought that could have been it. Hey, he's grabbing some money. He's going to put some more money into his company that he's building and growing, which is fantastic coffee, by the way. So if you like coffee, try it.
What's the name of it?
100 Hands.
100 Hands.
But it's yeah. So it's actually cold brew coffee, so it's good. I'm a coffee fanatic, you know that, Micah.
Yeah, you're coffee crazy.
So I yeah, pretty much. So it's great coffee. It's right up there with the guys from Caveman. They do a wonderful job as well. They're local. I support all the local coffee people and like local fighters as well. But if that was a money grab to just get some money, well then yeah, I agree with you. You know, he needs to collect his checks, collect his sponsorships, and get the heck out of there.
But you hit an interesting point. Training is rough. Training is vicious. What if there was a late in-camp injury and he was kind of too far into it physically and financially to pull back? Maybe there is one more fight. Maybe there's 3 more fights. It's really still, the ball is in Carlos's hands as far as his career, and it's a wait and see. But right now, we can only judge on the optics that we're seeing. And you're kind of going, ooh, from what you saw of his last 2 performances.
Absolutely. You don't want him to be the gatekeeper for the next generation. I don't think he wants to do that. I don't think he wants himself to be there. I think you kind of saw that with Keith Jardine when he left the sport. They were kind of making him the gatekeeper. Well, if you get past this guy, you're going to move on. If you're not, well, you're just going to stay where you're at. And I think he even realized it. Now look at him. I mean, he's a actor now, getting bigger and bigger roles. I see him on Shameless weekly, on Showtime, which is awesome to see. You know, and it's just there's ways to go outside of the sport, and if that's the case, I hope he's not the gatekeeper for Carlos' sake. Legacy, selfishness on my end, because like you, I am a fan of Carlos. I've always have been since he was fighting in Fight World at the Sunshine Theater. Now that's taken way back, you know, and then whenever I got to see him actually, or not see him, but read about it, I should say, when he fought at I believe it was called Rumble at the Rock. It was in Hawaii. It was like a BJ Penn tournament, and I believe who was it?
Anderson Silva, Yushin Okami, Carlos,
and all of those dudes. Yeah, and he ended up doing very well in that tournament, and that's where he started turning people's heads. Plus, going to Japan, you see those classic pictures of him with blood all over his chest, and stuff when he's a young kid. So for my selfish reasons, and again, I don't think he wants to be the gatekeeper of that division. If it is time to hang up, well, hey, you had a great career. You won the interim title. There's a very small percentage of people who can call themselves world champions at the highest level. He's one of them.
Right, he WEC champion, interim UFC champion, heck, and I will still contest to this day, UFC champion. He beat Robbie Lawler.
And I agree with that, you know. I think he did as well. I think he did enough to beat him.
And now, also, stepping outside of Carlos, outside of the main card real quick, was this a good event, did you think, overall?
It was a solid event. It wasn't, and maybe I'm going too far back. Remember when the Super Bowl cards used to be like Super Saturday, and then you'd have Super Bowl Sunday, and you'd party all weekend watching great fights, a great Super Bowl game, and then end of year, it was always the biggest fight card they could put together, and it was a spectacle. It was kind of like what you wrestling heads, WWE heads, WrestleMania, you know, like that was those special cards, SummerSlam, you know, you got those different things like that. That's what these kind of year-end cards, Super Bowl card, 4th of July card, weekend type thing, those kind of cards are kind of missing, and that's not what this was. This was a solid card. I wouldn't say bad. I wouldn't say great. It was right in the middle of it.
Now, some of that is just bad luck because how much better would the card have been? You think about Dominic Cruz versus Rivera versus Lineker, even Rivera versus Moraes could have been, instead of having DeCasey versus Hooker, where it seemed like everybody in the arena, I don't know about everybody at home because I was still watching the fight, but everybody in the arena, at least, that was break time. That was time to go get a beer. Nobody could care about that lightweight fight less. But imagine if we did have Jimmy Rivera on the card in one of those huge fights. Or even, let's think about if Conor McGregor literally didn't have his head up his ass, and we maybe did have Ferguson versus McGregor on this card. Would it have been that big status what the UFC was shooting for?
It would have been more special, I think, at that point, because then you would have had McGregor probably headline. And in fact, I say probably, but that's like a 99.9%.
I would call it absolute.
That he's going to headline that. And then you have Holly and Cyborg as a co-main event, which leading into a main event, that fight right there, it was a great fight. It really, truly was. So to go in to have the co-main and main do well, I think that turns the card around all in its own.
Right.
That excels its status from good to great.
Right, because then you have what we had thinking about Khabib versus Edson isn't co-main event. It's just on the card, along with Carlos, along with the Jimmy Rivera-Dominic Cruz fight, if everything went down to plan. Putting them all the way, then you're looking at Calvillo versus Esparza is just your feature FS1 prelim, giving you a really solid card where I think the UFC had good intentions. 217 was great. 218, holy fuck, that card exceeded expectations. This card had, I think, bigger expectations because of what 218 did, and then kind of, it just didn't live up to it. The matchups did not really go wow until that and main event.
Absolutely. And again, I want to emphasize that it wasn't a bad card. You just mentioned two other cards that were really good and great cards that came right before it. And again, I think you got, again, these older fans of mixed martial arts that want to see their version of WrestleMania, SummerSlam, something special, not just a house show, not just a Fox Sports 1 show or a Fox show. Make it special for these big, what Bellator calls tentpole events nowadays. You know, you don't want the small little casinos. You want the big arenas.
Do you think it's possible then for the UFC to, I guess we're going to call it 8, to make 8 big events a year? Because they're really trying with Fox. They're really trying. So all 4 of those have to be tentpole trademark events, but we're not talking about 2-3 title fight events. We're talking about big prospect events. And then you're talking about, you always have International Fight Week. We want to close out the year. We want Super Bowl. And there's probably got to be... Oh, and then every time that they head to Madison Square Garden, no matter when that is, they are linked that to try to make that a mega card, like they did with 217, possibly kind of overextending some of their more valued fighters with letting a card like this suffer. I think it really would have been bolstered if Conor wasn't an idiot, or you could have made a second title fight, Tyrone Woodley or whatnot.
Yeah. Do I think that they can? In 2016, I would have said yes. Absolutely, they could do it. Then everything got changed when they sold it, and who knows what their business model is. To me, it seems like whatever it takes to make money. Forget rankings. Let's do freak show fights. Let's go back to Pride days. Let's get people in the seats. If this guy can talk as much shit as he possibly can to position himself and the crowd loves it, let's do it. You know, and so this group that's in here now, I don't know. I don't know if the matchmakers have as much power as they once did. and that's kind of my thing. I don't even think Dana has as much power as he once did. Everybody talks about, oh, he looks like the fire's out of him. You know, he's not as passionate as he once was. Well, it fades on people after a while. You know, everything does. Heck, I was in it for 10 years, and you know, the passion is still there, but is the love always as strong? Maybe not. Maybe not. You know, there's sometimes we need breaks. And I don't know if this new group of people share that kind of love and passion and understanding of the sport, and they're just thinking with the wallet, the money, the business, the sponsorships, and whatever's good to make a profit.
Looking at that, where do you think... We'll step away. We'll go back to the event. We'll step away from the big scheme question, because with as many weight classes and as many fighters and as many champions, I think the short-term answer would be, obviously, they have the ability to make 8 to 10 special events a year and stack them up between prospects,
But will they do it? They have the ability, but will they do it? That's the question. Because you also got to factor in pay-per-view money. Right now, they're in negotiations with Fox. I hear they're talking to Amazon, Netflix, a few others like that. Some crazy to also do some things with them. I've heard ESPN with their new digital app that they're launching. That it's possible that they may be talking with them as well. Yes, they're capable, but will that make sense money-wise for them? And that's where I think their focus is. I don't think it's about who's the best fighting the best. Remember when that was always said? We're going to get the number one fighter fighting the number two fighter, and that's what makes us better than boxing. It was never that boxing was really truly dead, because they'll never die. But they didn't have the politics behind it, because we have the power. We position these fighters, and now you're seeing what is best for the business money-wise. It really isn't the best fighting the best all the time.
And what you said struck a point right there. We position the fighters, and that is being taken to a new level, to where Bellator and the UFC, the only thing that separates them from a company is the sometimes shitty way that Bellator handles their undercards. But if we're talking about creating stars, promoting people, and how they crown champions, how they can position their things, I think Scott Coker and WME have a lot more in common than him and Dana White ever did.
That could be very true. You know, I'm not agreeing with the way that these guys are coming in. But I understand he's got to hit certain numbers. He has to hit certain numbers. I know he's not on pay-per-view structure, but with Paramount now it's not Spike no more. It's Paramount Network. He has to hit a certain obligation to keep sponsorships around.
Oh yeah, I need to check my TV today.
And that's their deal. So that's why they're trying to go after these names, which some of them are older. They're grabbing a few of these younger guys. I think you're going to see a shift all the way around. I think, personally, they're going to throw a lot of money at Cub Swanson. And I say he goes for the money because he's got kids. He's got a wife. He's got people he's got to support. If these guys are treating it so much like a business, let me tell you, there's a lot of these fighters are starting to say, I'm going to treat it like a business, more like a business. Yeah. And I'm going to just get paid. I'm going to get mine and get out.
You have to do that. And I want to talk about the co-main event real quick. But talking about that it's like a business, it ties into the co-main event. Because after Khabib won, people start bringing up Conor's name again. And Conor McGregor tweeted something disrespectful, but basically said, I'll return when they want to pay me what I'm worth. And with as many eyeballs as that fucker brings in, he probably deserves huge amounts of money. But these guys already deserve more money than what they're getting paid. And if we thought the Fertittas and Dana were trying to strangle the money out of these dudes, they were raking in the cash and just playing hardball. WME is now put into the position where the fighters know what the money is, but WME's like, no, we don't have that. We just paid that. We're trying to get that back. Where those guys screwed you out of all that money.
Yeah, I believe that, and I don't think Conor comes back unless they do pay him some kind of money, very good money, and I think it's going to be Nate Diaz. I think that's the fight they're going to make. They're going to make the trilogy at 155. It might even be 160, just so he doesn't have to defend the title. I don't think Nate gives a shit about a title. I think he cares about the money.
Do you think they pay Nate Diaz? He's saying he wants 10 to 15 million. So, what do you think each guy makes if they make this fight happen?
I say Nate's going to go down to about six, between 6 and 8, and I say Conor. Well, it's hard though, because if you make what did he make in the boxing?
Made nearly $100 million.
So I mean, what are you going to give him? 10? You know, like what do you do with that? And that's where the real problem lies. They can't give him that kind of money anymore. Even if they go half, okay, Uncle Sam takes half. He's only making $25 million. I know I just said only, but put it in the perspective of the $100 million that he made just in one fight. What are you going to give him? $1 million, and then get half taken from him? $2 million, and then get half taken from him? $8 million? You only get $4 million now?
Well, then we're saying, actually, if we're looking at that, we're thinking he made $60 million from the last fight, because it was like 120 is what I heard. So if we're saying Uncle Sam took half, then that's saying he made $60 million. So yeah, what are you going to try to do? Offer 50 to give 25?
Exactly. So I mean, these are the type of things that you got to work out, and they had Dana White, WME. I was going to say Zuffa. WME group had to have known what they were going to get into when they made that Mayweather fight for him.
We've already talked about it in a private conversation that ego and greed can be pretty evil, and we're not even in this topic, but I think it's right here very discernible, because I think that short-term money grab from WME, they didn't realize how detrimental that would be. Yeah, Dana, let Conor go fight Floyd. Do you know how much money we can rake in through our cable and internet affiliates? Do you know how much money we could do this, that? And they probably made 50, 100 million, because again, they got a $4 or $5 billion debt that they're looking at. How the fuck do we wipe this away and make this profitable? Wow, they went for the money grab, but in so, they gave away the cash cow, because you had McGregor at what? 10 million, 8 million, 6 million, something like that for the second Diaz fight, and instead of building him up gradually, you let him jump in a rocket ship and shoot out of a stratosphere that you can't operate in now.
And you can't control. There's no control there anymore. And yeah, Mayweather, I think, is the best at selling himself and pay-per-view and selling. He sold Conor. I don't care what anybody says. He carried him for 10 rounds and then put him away when he wanted to. I know everybody's excited and they still say, oh, he gave him the word. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. Look at it again. Watch it again. Mayweather is sitting there smiling. He's not even listening. His dad's not giving him real instruction in the corner. They're laughing. They're having a good time. This was 100% sparring session for 10 rounds, and then decided, okay, time's up. Let's go ahead and take him out. Two different sports. But you're right. Again, the money. I think, and then all these UFC fighters, MMA fighters started seeing that, and they're seeing the business side. Well, if you're not going to pay me, I'm not going to fight. You're seeing it with Tyrone Woodley. Oh, I got to get surgery anyway, so, yeah, you don't want to pay me? Cool. I need surgery. And I'll sit out. And I'm okay with that. These guys, look at Chris. Look at Chris Cyborg. She had one fight remaining, and she wasn't happy with it. Now she's making her money. She's happy. Everybody called Tito Ortiz a dummy. Oh, he's stupid. He's going to ruin her. She's making the most money she's ever made with him as his manager. That shirt should go around. Dana is my bitch.
The UFC...
The one that he wore on his retirement. He's doing it the right way. Everybody called him a bad guy, but look, they're taking a page out of his book, saying I'm not fighting for chump change. You want me to fight? You're going to pay me what I'm worth. The same thing Randy Couture said. You don't think they paid him when he came back and finally fought Tim Sylvia? He fought Tim Sylvia? Absolutely. You don't think they paid him even more when he fought Brock Lesnar? Absolutely. Those were just not disclosed. It started with these guys, the older guys, and then it just skyrocketed with Conor. And now these young guys are looking at it and they're like, oh my God, I can make this much money. I'm not going to fight for that. Yeah, I know I signed that, but you can't force me to fight. Oh, I got an injury. Can't fight. Sorry.
This is the progression. This is what needs to happen. Because let's be honest, some 10-10, shit's worthless. What we're seeing on the regional scene, shit is worthless. The money that you make to try to get to the UFC is peanuts compared to what they're trying to make eventually, because you are putting your body through hell. This is combat sports. This is violent. This is taking time off your life.
Absolutely. I mean, I spar here and there, and I just do straight boxing. I don't do any of the kicking or anything like that. And there's days where the next day I feel like I was in a car accident, literally a car accident. Getting out of bed, I could only imagine getting smashed in the mouth with an elbow. I could only imagine getting smashed day in, day out with a knee and having to heal and then go right back. Because I could take off. I could take off a week if I wanted to. I could absolutely. I have no fight coming up. I do it for pure me. So these guys actually are in training camp. They can't take that day off. Oh, I'm sore. I can't move. They got to get up and do it. So a lot of people don't realize that when they start saying, oh, this fighter sucks, that fighter sucks. I'm like, they don't suck. I'm like, they would beat almost, I'd say 75% of the people in the United States. The lowest level guys in the UFC, the lowest level guys in Bellator would beat the snot out of 75% of John Q. Public. And you're over here saying they suck. They're out of gas in the cage. It's amazing, the super fans that are out here, and they're just like, oh, I can't believe this fighter sucks. I can't believe that fighter sucks. And that drives me nuts. Same thing with the comments that I hear. Oh, Cyborg's a man. No, she's not. People got to stop saying that. She's not. She's got a daughter. She's got a husband. She's got a mother. She may have made some bad choices in terms of enhancements in the past, but she's being tested. You could go, it's public record. You could see when she's been tested multiple times. She's not on him now. She hasn't been on him for a while. Leave her alone. Some people are just blessed with better looks than others. That drives me nuts when the fans come out nowadays and they're, oh, he sucks, he got knocked out. Even on the regional scene, it drives me bananas. I'm like, you don't understand what these guys put their bodies through.
Right, I try to look at it as performance by performance. If I'm saying somebody sucked, yeah, they sucked tonight. You don't know how injured they were. You don't know what was going on in the mental side of life. You don't know what kind of injury they sustained through camp. I can tell you that a recently crowned champion from New Mexico, she has a plethora of more injuries than what was known heading into an Ultimate Fighter finale, and fought still the fight that she did, winning a title. So you don't know what these people are going through. And then talking about Cyborg, I've seen a couple different thoughts on this, and none of them make it acceptable to say what the photographer from JacksonWink put out on social media. That guy looks like a complete asshat and hopefully never gets credentialed by the UFC again.
Well, do you have that up by chance?
Do I have it up? I can bring it up real quick. Let's see.
Pull it up and read it. Read his real quick.
The exact comment that led to
what I think anybody that's listening needs to know. And this is Mark Aragon. He's the official photographer. He does the Jackson's podcast and whatnot. I don't know his background. I've never seen him around. And again, I've been around for 10 plus years in the MMA scene, boxing scene, combat sports scene here in New Mexico. I've personally never seen him until they popped up downtown. He's a former retired APD officer. I hear he's got baggage all on his own, but that's not my business to put out there. But for a guy to judge and say what he said, that's super reckless on his end. And he shouldn't be credentialed. But I want people to hear what he said. If you hadn't already heard it, they need to hear it. And I personally think JacksonWink, whoever's at the top there, need to reprimand him, need to bring him down to earth, need him to publicly apologize and not give the BS apology that we read off air. And you can read his apology because I think it's BS on my end. Oh, well, they said this, so I said this publicly. But they said it privately on a UFC shuttle with nobody else on but you and them.
The controversy starts out, everybody, with Mark Aragon. That's MA2_media on Instagram, posting a picture of Chris Cyborg, the UFC 219 post-fight press conference, with the caption, "This dude is tough as hell." That being said, at the press conference, he said Holly was the first one to make his nose bleed. "You are my hero, Holly Holm. See you back in the gym. Hashtag UFC 219. So I believe that's 3 times in that comment that Mark Aragon refers to Chris Cyborg as a male. And again, married twice, I believe, a daughter, obviously a female. Now, what you said right there is just ignorant and stupid, and is obviously, again, such an ignorant thought, probably just demeaning somebody off of their looks, which it's just inappropriate in the day and age that we are. Can we stop judging people off of this or that? We're all human. This life is short enough. Just be happy, whatever. But he's affiliated with the gym, and he was a credentialed photographer. Now, he said this in a heated response in his half-ass apology to things that he heard the Cyborg team saying on the UFC shuttle, leaving the venue back to the hotel. Hey, Sal, you work with the commission at Buffalo Thunder, right?
Yes.
Don't need you to repeat things, but I'm sure with the amount of times you've been around, when a guy or girl wins their fight and they're on that extra high, their vernacular may lead to popping off at the mouth and saying things they don't mean. There may be some over-boisterous joy, such as the things that the Cyborg team was saying. It's not unheard of, right?
It is not, and I'll take it even a step further and cement a little bit more into it. I've worked with Bellator. I've been on those transport vans back to and from the hotel, the shuttles that take the fighters to the arena and back to the hotels. I've been on those, working for that company, working with that company, Spike TV, Bellator. And you hear guys talking. You hear female fighters talking. On the way back, their adrenaline's pumping. But that's where it stays. You don't see me posting it. Oh, man, Micah, I say to myself, I'm like, if I reacted to everybody's response from the 10-plus years that I've been doing this, oh, my God. I'd either have a line of fighters, and I'm talking fighters around the United States, coming to Albuquerque to find me for repeating what I've been told, or nobody will ever want me around.
Exactly.
Nobody.
Some stuff stays private.
Oh, there's almost, I can honestly say 95% of things that I have been told have stayed private in these past 10 years. If they tell me to keep it private, it's private. If they're on the transport or if they're in the back locker rooms, let me tell you, I've heard guys say it before they even go to the cage at local events here, say some wild and obnoxious things. But I can't judge them. Cornermen at weigh-ins say crazy stuff to each other.
The shit that corners say during the fight to each other is crazy.
I've seen corners yelling at corners across the way, trying to fight with each other, pick fights with each other in between the rounds.
And now, here's a different also side of thought. There's plenty of great photographers we know out here. Will Fox has had the opportunity to work with the UFC. Christopher Cook, Sal Gomez, they're both brilliant photographers. Franklin Romero, all people I've worked with who would die for the opportunity to be there at a UFC event shooting the things that Mark Aragon got. A guy that, again, will all admittedly say he just popped up on the scene out of nowhere getting this position, and he squanders the opportunity in such a manner, and he lets it become such a personal manner. Also, again, emphasizing he just showed up. So him defending his team so much, it's not like this is a guy that has been there for many, many years through many, many wars. He's a photographer who just popped off at the mouth, and we can't not emphasize it because Bloody Elbow already put out the article, but that makes 20, I believe, consecutive UFC losses for fighters representing the JacksonWink Academy. So they already have that, and now you're going to have another negative story on top of John Jones. The story here locally of 2018 is the continued bad media and bad publicity of the JacksonWink Academy.
Yeah, and gyms go through peaks and valleys. Let me tell you, like, they were at the highest high. They were winning percentages, and they had stories about how they're the most winning team and this, that, and the other in the years that I've been around this MMA. And we've all praised them and said, hey, they're doing great. They got the most wins in the UFC. And then there's the lows. What they're going through right now, they got to take the wins and losses. They have to. We all do. We all roll with the punches. There's sometimes I win, and there's a lot of times I lose. But am I going to run out there on my social media and put all my losses and frustrations out there? Heck no. Never have. Never will. I keep everything pretty tight-knit in the sense of wins and losses. My wins, I love to share with people. My losses, the close people know about them. But other than that, I'm not here to share frustrations publicly with, especially your social media that, yeah, you are the JacksonWink's photographer. You have a podcast with the JacksonWink name tied to you. You got to hold your standard. I used to do their video interviews for them back in the day whenever the general manager was Ricky at Jackson's gym before they moved. And I would have to hold a standard to myself. I would never try and say, there was some crazy stuff going on in the gym. There were guys saying things, wild things happening here and there, like with guys, and you just couldn't. You had to hold yourself at that higher standard, and not let it out because it's gym business. Two, how is it that you're going to be some form of media, and that's where I think it's kind of weird nowadays, is anybody can just pick up a camera and be a photographer, it seems like. Anybody that knows how to edit a little bit of video can be a video person. There's no passion behind it. You just mentioned names, that guys that are in the grind. Yourself, you had Jorge from here locally that was in there. I was working for ESPN Radio doing a primetime a combat sports show. You're talking Sal Gomez. There's even before that, there's a guy named Andrew Diamatos who used to shoot the Mets in New York and the New York Islanders or Rangers, one of those hockey teams. He was down here, and he moved down here, and he started shooting guys, all the fighters from Fit and Jackson's, and he'd go to local events. I mean, so there are guys. The one that I hold the highest for is NewMexicoBoxing.com. It's not there no more. Chris Cazone. This guy has been to every single big fight that has ever taken place in Mayweather's Money Mayweather persona. You always saw him shooting in the corners, pictures of Manny Pacquiao's fights. I mean, and this guy had private conversations with him, and he'd tell me, this such and such, or she such and such, and this promoter, and this. I never let those out. Those are private conversations. whether we were at the casino together getting ready to report on it or not. I'm not going to say anything that we said together. I'd have him on my show. He'd talk about boxing. There's a few others that are older. You got to hold yourself to a higher standard, and not everybody truly is media. And I think the JacksonWink camp needs to really look into it, because you're in the day and age where it's all going to come out. You're having top executives for sexual harassment getting fired left and right all over. You can see it almost every day in the news. Somebody's getting fired. Somebody's in trouble. Somebody's having to not say anything. And they've already had an issue with Aljamain Sterling and them liking a comment that I won't even bring up, because you're just going to piss me off with that comment. And you liking it as a gym. Especially when you have guys in there that are former world champions that should be pissed off with me with that kind of, you liking that kind of comment that came out with Aljamain Sterling. People can Google it if they want to look that up. I don't need to bring that up. But you don't do that. You don't do that as a professional company, and that's what you should be, because you just got this fancy big gym. You're a professional company. To look internally and see, maybe do some house cleaning.
There's a bad look right now on the gym. There has to be a way to rebound, and they need to figure that out. And the day I'm talking to, I'm pretty sure knows who they are. There has to be a change. There just has to be a change. I've even seen Landon Venata sharing on social media. He reshared the situation, or at least I believe the article of the situation, and hashtag not my photographer. So people are already distancing themselves away from the situation, because again, it's the gym is making the responses, but who's really behind, who's making the responses as the fighters themselves? Holly Holm has never had a shred of indecency in her body, and her name is almost being associated with this because it was her fight, but we know it's nothing to do. So it's harmful by association again, and they have to make a change. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I've never, and again, I emphasize, I've been in this for over 10 years. I've never heard Holly ever say a bad thing about one person, period.
Ever.
Whether it's opponent or girls that come and call her out. And you saw, you can see it. Chris brought in all these ex-boxers, and it's funny. And I'm like, well, half of you guys got beat by her. The other half are jealous of her success. And that's why you guys are going and extending helpful hands to Cyborg. But she never talked bad about him. And they even questioned her about it. And they're like, well, that's good. They're great fighters, this, that, and the other. She never says anything bad about people. But you're right. Guilty by association.
And that is harmful. And the only thing I didn't like on the Chris Cyborg side of handling all this is in her response to the photo that Mark Aragon put up, she said, I've never said anything. He said, I've never said anything disrespectful to Holly Holm or the team. Well, she did have some PED accusations towards Holly when she was trying to get the media to hype up and give attention to this fight so that the UFC would make it. So I don't know if she felt that was just, playing the fight game or whatever kind of talk, and it wasn't real.
Did she say something bad, or was it just that she's been tested more than them?
I think
was it more of a complaint?
I think it was. It might have just been a complaint, but it was something about that Holly needed to be tested. Either way, I don't feel that she was completely air of saying she had never said anything disrespectful, but that does not in any way deter that the comment that was made had stepped way out of line.
Absolutely. And fighters do talk, but you can't be accusing this person of being a transgender. Not that there's anything wrong with that, if that's the case, but there needs, like you said, people need to be people and just love each other and respect each other. But you shouldn't be calling people those type of things.
Now,
It's
what
not
about?
that type of world. We don't live in those type of days. It's wrong, and I really truly believe the UFC will hand down their answer, and he won't get credentialed again.
I believe that's correct. Now, one other thing I want to touch on as we're on this main event topic, well, not even talking about the main event, but talking about the outside stuff. We've talked about the PED performance, the PED kind of speculations around Chris Cyborg. Now, I've also seen a line of thought that said if you had been a previous user of steroids and you had cycled, that there's a theory that even if you stop afterwards, that a metabolite inside of the muscle, inside of your muscle fibers, will still react positively, so that even down the line it is easier to gain size. So is there any possibility, do you believe, Sal, that Cyborg incurs a advantage from possibly the misdirection of what she did previously?
I don't. I'm not in theory of that, because I've seen bodybuilders who cycle on and off, and their bodies go from really big muscles to itty bitty bodies. And there's regular old Joes that have done cycles of steroids where they get really, really big, and then once they get off, they go back to being super small, and their strength is not the same. And you know what? That's funny. I'm gonna find out, though, because I have my buddy who's trained fighters, trained baseball players, trained basketball players, all types of athletes. I'm gonna talk to him about it and see what he has to say about it, Diego Baca, and I'm gonna see, because I don't believe so. I think you actually diminish. You're hurting yourself personally. I think
that's what I thought.
I don't see the advantage.
But I saw an article floating around on the internet suggesting such a thing, so I wanted to throw it out just to see if anybody else had heard that, because, again, I'm with you. I thought it did diminish and hurt you once you cycle off, kind of like any drug. But let's talk about the main event. We haven't talked about the fight. Talking about the fight itself, I could not be much more impressed with just the fight overall. Went in looking for the greatest women's mixed martial arts contest that we had ever seen, because that's what these two ladies are, the two greatest mixed martial artists that we've seen to this point, I believe. And that's what we really did get. Cyborg with her freaking counter punching. Early on, Holly was landing her right hand. Holly did have the movement. But I was disappointed and quite shocked by the lack of attack from Holly towards the body and or the legs of Cyborg. Holly was very headhunting centric in this fight, which surprised me, but not what was more surprising than Cyborg being able to carry her power for 5 rounds. Holly used explosive movements to get away. She never tires anyway, so she's able to. But Cyborg cut off the cage and stalked Holly in a strategic manner, again conserving her energy and using it in bursts, and I was quite amazed by her ability to carry that power for 5 rounds in a marvelous performance. Huge counter punching, devastating shots landed by Cyborg. What did you think, Sal?
Well, let me start out by saying this. Holly Holm did amazing. And I know people are like, what? You're being a homer. No, I'm not. Because I said 2 rounds or less. I publicly said that to a lot of people. I didn't actually put it out there on my social media, but anybody that asked, I said she's not going to be able to withstand for 2 rounds. She'll run around for 2 rounds. Cyborg will cut off the cage, attack her. She actually, to me, I thought she won the first round. The second round, she lost the third and fourth, and whoever was going to win that 5th round was going to win that fight. She buckled her. She bloodied her up. She gave her a fight. So first off, hey, Holly did more, being that she's 135 pounds and moved up to 145 pounds, than any other woman has ever done to Chris Cyborg. And so for that you win even in defeat. I feel she won in defeat. Now, that being said, Cyborg just legitimized herself as the very best women's pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world, period. There's no, oh, well, if Ronda would have fought her, Ronda would have got killed. by this version. Ronda would have got killed by the passive version. This is the best version of Chris we have seen. Her hands look amazing. Her conditioning is there. She's not going to gas out. Had this fight taken place a year or so ago, I think Holly could have beat her. If they ever, and Zuffa's going into boxing, that's why I say this, if they try and make a Zuffa boxing and Holly and her fight in a boxing match, Holly beats her 9 times out of 10. In boxing, straight boxing, without having to worry about the clinch and the takedowns and the kicks and the knees. And that's what I think played a big part in what you were questioning, is they were worried about hitting that mat with her. I think in a straight boxing match, Holly wins 9 times out of 10. And I'm by no means being a New Mexico homer right now. I just saw what I saw, and I really believe that they were really nervous about touching the floor. Now, to match her strength for strength and put her up against the cage, that was impressive.
Nobody shut down a Chris like that.
Chris countering her the way she did and figured it out, kudos to her cornermen for teaching her how to counter. Because I don't think she could have done that a couple years ago. I don't think she would have recognized it. Look at her, the way she used to fight. Just throw punches, going forward, head down, and using her brute strength.
Moving away
amazing job.
From her husband and joining up with that California team and Jason Perillo, Tito Ortiz, we've seen the next level of Cyborg.
Yep, and she's here to stay for a while. I don't think there's any girls that are going to give her a hard time. I don't care if they find the best fighters at 145. They're not going to do anything to her.
That's the next thing. What does the UFC do? What do you do with Cyborg now?
The 145 fighter from Invicta, the Invicta champion, Megan, I forget her, Anderson, is it?
Megan Anderson. Do we just feed the young Australian to the wolf? Do we just throw her in the octagon with Cyborg? Because there was a time where they announced that fight, and then Anderson had some kind of personal issue, had to pull out, and that's when we got Tanya Evinger. Now, I follow Anderson on social media. I'll have to go look. We have not heard much from her, though, since hearing about pulling out of that fight. Do you think they bring her in all of a sudden to fight Cyborg?
If her head is in the right place and she's got herself cleared out, then yeah, do it. Why not? You're a champion from another organization who's basically your feeder league for females. It's time to get called up to the big leagues. Let's go. And said, I'm not going to fight her. I don't want to fight her. I'm going to fight at 135. And that's one thing people that say, oh, well, Hollywood is 1-4. Well, who are her last fights? Look at who she's fought in her last fights. The very best, period.
You got that right. We're talking about Miesha Tate. We're talking about Valentina. We're talking about Durandame. We're talking about Cyborg. And we're talking about Bethe Correia. And of those names, the least formidable is Bethe Correia, and Holly waxed her with a kick. So she's done what she's had to do. And we're talking about fighting the very best in the world. Durandame, like you said, scared to fight Cyborg. It's one of those things where Cyborg is such an impressive fighter, but it's crazy. There is just nothing. No 45ers. I can't find a featherweight fight anywhere outside of that once in a blue moon from Invicta and from the UFC. It's just almost, we could look back in history one day and just say it was the wrong time for Cyborg because we have just no competition for her. There's one fight to make and that's it.
Yeah, right now, I mean, the matchmakers have a job to do. Invicta has a job, a very uphill battle kind of job to do, and it's to find these 145-pound women.
Now, also on the night...
But here's my question then, because everybody says, oh, Layla Ali, she paved the way, she did this, she did that. Well, she was a heavier fighter. She didn't have that many girls that were really good at but they still consider her very good in paving the way in women's boxing. A lot of people do.
The
And they don't
PED speculations have killed Cyborg.
Asterisk by her. That's the, but that when was the last one? Because the one that she got cleared for was something to do with, I believe it was like a pill for it was a medication, correct? It wasn't anything.
There was
like
a medication, the one where she got the therapeutic retroactive exemption once you saw it popped her. That just looked bad because you should have been able to go through the right channels. That just looked bad more in a personal trait. But the one that everyone goes was the 16-second, I think, knockout of Yasu Noyama in Strikeforce some years back.
So 2011? We're 2018? So
people will not let him die.
But yeah, everybody says John Jones is the greatest light heavyweight champion, probably even the greatest, and this guy's been popped twice.
There's a prejudice and an unfair balance like there is in a lot of sports and just a lot of public opinion polls. Oh, because we like this guy, because we don't. And oh, make me say it out loud. Daniel Cormier is the greatest light heavyweight of all time, as much as I dislike that guy.
The non-cheating one, yes.
Yeah, because we don't know. So many asterisks.
But you never know, because you could say John is the most talented fighter, but he's his greatest enemy.
Definitely, and it's one of those things where we start talking about, well, you have to question everything that Anderson Silva's done in the past. You have to question that everything John Jones has done in the past. But I like the Pride Never Die boys sitting there smiling like, Fedor's great, Wanderlate's great, this guy's great. Dude, come on, Japan, the Yakuza, the Russian Mafia, all the dudes that had their hands in that shit, and you're just going to sit around there and be like, oh, those UFC guys were on steroids? Yeah, because your guys weren't. Sure.
Well, look at Josh Barnett got popped for steroids in the UFC, then vacated their belt, went to Japan, fought for a while there. Mark Kerr, steroid head, went to Japan, fought for Pride. You know, you had a bunch of Vanderlei Silva.
Don't you see the roid rage coming out in Bob Sapp every weigh-in, and then the emotional crumble in every fight?
So I mean, going back to the fight, it's you know, you can't throw stones at the glass house.
Exactly. It's weird. Cyborg should get a lot more credit and a lot more acclaim. I believe when you look in Japan, when you look overseas, in Brazil, in South America, she does just get a lot more positive feedback. Not to say that she doesn't have a huge fan base here in America, but she has a lot of her detractors, I believe, here in America.
Yeah, and that's true. But you know, then there's a way to market her right there for the UFC and WME. Take her to Brazil. Have her perform better. Put her title on the line.
What about in Brazil?
International champion.
What about in Brazil? 140-pound catch weight, or no, it's gonna have to be 145 pounds. We can't even talk about Cyborg at 140 because that nearly killed him.
Yeah. No more catch weight. She's the champion. She deserves people to fight her at 145.
Okay, 145. I never want to see a champ, but let's try it. Amanda Nunes, Cyborg in Brazil. What do you think?
I think that's perfect. Let's do it. If they want money, both of them do, and both of them want to fight. You know, and I know Cyborg has publicly said she doesn't really want to fight another Brazilian, but if she needs to, she will.
I think that's the fight to make.
I think it's a worse beating than even Holly took.
Quite possibly, but I've heard Nunes be so abrupt as to say she would take the fight. And even looking at the 135-pound division, it's kind of dried up. Juliana Pena got pregnant. We've already seen Nunes versus Shevchenko. It's a close fight, but Shevchenko's going down to 125. Raquel Pennington, I believe, is injured, and they've deemed her, even though she's been injured for quite some months, I feel like, they've deemed her the next challenger. So would it almost make sense, Cyborg versus Nunez?
It could. It absolutely could. And move forward from there. I mean, that could be the money fight that they're looking for in terms of whether it's viewership on a Fox card or it could be a pay-per-view.
Now, just as dominant as Cyborg, and we've talked Cyborg almost this whole time, but Khabib Nurmagomedov knocked my socks off as he pummeled and beat the schnit out of Edson Barbosa. And Barbosa came out firing those first 2 minutes, but then crumbled under the pressure, got dragged to the ground, and just abused. I'm fascinated by Nurmagomedov. Do we get Nurmagomedov Ferguson that fight? What's your whole thoughts on Nurmagomedov, the performance, and what's next for him?
He's the next lightweight champion. As long as he can make sure he can make weight, that's his biggest battle right now. I don't see anybody taking him out. I really don't. And Connor's the interim champion. The only thing is can Ferguson use his slick jiu-jitsu to catch him? I don't know. I don't think so, though. I really don't. I think he's the uncrowned champion as long as he can make weight. His biggest battle will be with the scale.
His second biggest enemy is staying healthy and playing him, but just ridiculously talented, ridiculously amazing. UFC 219, it wasn't everything we hoped it would be, but it was still pretty good in its own right, and it only gets, again, downplayed because 218 and 217 were so amazing. It was a great way to cap off the year. So before we're done here, I did want to talk about the year in review a little bit, and this year there were so many events, Bellator, the UFC, the LFA coming together, and I can't wait for this year in 2018 because, gotta know, we're going to have the first ever year or season I think it is, for the Pro Fighters League. Interested to see what Ray Zeffo and them pull out, as they're supposed to be $1 million tournaments, and I just love hearing 7-figure paydays for the fighters. That's amazing. But Sal, what did you think of this year? What was the biggest story you think of 2017 for MMA?
Well, I'll go for locally. For MMA, for combat sports in New Mexico, it was northern New Mexico. Buffalo Thunder, they were, believe it or not, and usually I'm not a fan of the JacksonWink cards because they used to be set up in the sense of you kind of knew what side was going to win. Lately, they've been some great local fights. If you guys have not been out to the MMA fights, oh my goodness. You may not know their names, but by the end of the night, you will. Even the amateurs. They're very good fights, entertaining. Same with boxing. Northern New Mexico just loves their boxing. They don't care who's on the card. But it could be cops versus police, and they love it. They'll go out on a Tuesday night. They may not drink as much. It may be a little bit quieter, a little less obnoxious, but the crowds still go out there for that. So I would say for the scene here locally, it would be the Buffalo Thunder shows, both mix of the boxing shows, the Holmes Productions, and then also the Jackson MMA series. Those two events out there seem to be the ones to showcase the local guys a little bit more. UFC, Bellator, I just want to see the best fighting the best in both of them. And then build your stars, your young guys. I think for Bellator, they need to focus in on that. Whether they're using the Bellator app, have Paramount build them an application and have kind of a maybe mimic the Tuesday night series and have these guys fighting for free through their app. In maybe they could get a gym, a warehouse, something, make it unique where they go into a gym and they have one gym versus another gym and set them up that way, where they can build their young guys up and then move them on to TV fights and start doing that instead of just hanging on to the names. Let's start building stars in Bellator. That's what I want to see moving forward. And then with the UFC, I want to see the best fighting the best, period. I don't want to see the fluff fighting the very best. If GSP comes back, I want to see him at 170. I don't want to see him against McGregor. I want to see him at 170. I don't care who they put him against at 170. I really don't. They could give him the champion if they want to, or they could give him as long as it's in the top 5, give him somebody there, and then move him to the championship fight. He deserves it. But I want to see more relevance in their not just mouth getting the fights that they want to see. I'm curious to see the Zuffa boxing moving into 2018. I think Mayweather's going to be a lot more behind it, and I think also PBC may be going away, and I think it's going to fold into Zuffa boxing where Al Heyman uses him as his main promoter. I don't think it's going to be, because right now what PBC is kind of the shell company, I guess you can say, and they use the local promoters in these areas to be the promoters. So, for instance, they brought PBC into Buffalo Thunder here, I believe, last February, I think it was.
Yes.
And they used Pat Holmes as the local promoter to load the undercard. And I think that's what they're going to do with Zuffa Boxing, is I think they're going to do that. That's my guess. That would be the safest way for him to make some money. And, of course, use their streams and whatnot to start utilizing, hey, UFC.tv, I think or UFC Fight Pass, I think they need to look more at a page of what the wrestling company's doing and start focusing on those digital streams a little bit more. Get their numbers up. Get 1 million viewers or subscribers, and start making that a source of income via MMA and boxing. And start having the Tuesday night fights. Maybe set up Tuesday night fights, 1 week MMA, 1 week boxing, and let's start building these young guys up, because you have to get these guys ready to get in there. I feel this year in both leagues, you're seeing a lot of these younger guys getting just rushed up when they're not even built up, ready to be in the bright lights of both cages.
So my story of the year this year, at least on the local scene, has been the emergence of Clovis, a force of one MMA, Harvey Park, Chris Cortez on the amateur side, Nico Nathan earning a contract with King of the Cage. I heard Abel Cullum's going to be training down there. It's a small gym in a small city that's been in the forefront of a lot of main events and a lot of featured fights on King of the Cage, on the JacksonWink Fight Nights, on the Jackson MMA series. So I think that's locally my story of the year, is the emergence of another young gym, adding to the power gyms that we already have with Fit NHB, with Latrell Yee, with JacksonWink. On the national scene, I think it's the adjustment or the pushback, what we're seeing. Are fans adjusting to WME trying to hand us this big fight era, following the footsteps almost of what Scott Croker was laying out with Bellator, and Bellator is still doing some interesting things. Free agencies up and down. The UFC has quietly been retaining a lot of guys, but will it stay that way? So it's how will people adjust to this big fight era? And I guess leading into 2018, my biggest fear is how much of a merger are we going to get between boxing and MMA? Because again, I basically on the boxing side keep it to covering the local scene because we don't get enough, but we do have some prospects that need to be tested, need to be challenged, and moving forward are a big deal. Now, also, I wanted to ask you about, Sal, Fighter of the Year, because this year seemed to be, even though it was so busy and so active, it wasn't like there was just one or two guys that were always in the headlines. The headline grabbers were the guys not fighting this year. Thank you, big MMA media, for always going and calling guys that aren't active.
So are you talking national or local?
Well, okay, local. Local on the MMA side, who do you think would be the MMA Fighter of the Year, if you've seen enough to have an opinion?
Locally, you know what? You stroke a fire with the Clovis gym, and I'm going to go with Harvey Park. I have to. I think this guy has done his thing inside the cage, and For being a guy who does it part-time, he's a police officer in Clovis, New Mexico, and just does it because he loves it. That's it. That's what he does it for. He likes to fight, loves to beat people up. Nice guy all the way around. I have to give it to him locally.
I concur. CageMinds.com. We're going to have our 2017 year-end awards going up here this week, and the New Mexico Mouth MMA fighter of 2017 is Harvey Park. Now, here's another one I'm going to throw at you real quick. I went with a breakthrough fighter because I think that this guy needs to be recognized for what he's doing, taking a step on the next level, and that's Andres Quintana, because it's quietly being done with Combates as they're almost a tweener league, but he had a really impressive year, and I feel like he's getting more known nationally, giving him a local Breakthrough Fighter of the Year award for MMA.
Breakthrough, stepping up nationally, finally. Look, as you know, I helped bring him up from Roswell to Albuquerque and get him linked up with Chris Luttrell at the time. And he's still with Chris, but now it's Luttrell Yee's amazing. I think if Little Brother gets his head on straight, I think he's another guy. I think they could. I heard he's about to get signed to Combates as well, possibly. That could be the Diaz brothers of Combates. You know, and those two guys together can make some moves this year in 2018. I'm excited for both of them, and yeah, absolutely, I agree with you on that. I think he could hang in there with anyone on their roster, and then move forward from there. Let's go negotiate and let's get inside the UFC.
And then talking about the UFC, talking about big-time MMA. Now, on our awards up there at CageMinds.com, real quick, I'm going to have LFA Male Fighter of the Year. I'm giving that to LFA lightweight champion Robert Watley. Went 3-0 in the year, 2-0 in LFA. Dominant performances. My Bellator Male Fighter of the Year, AJ McKee. They've really done a lot to make him also their Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. 4-0, representing in big prospects. Because I almost feel like we're going to go Fighter of the Year, and it's going to be a UFC guy, but Bellator and LFA still deserve, each getting their own Fighter of the Year. So then looking at the UFC, I'm almost split here down the middle of sharing this award between two guys, and it's hard for me to differentiate between Max Holloway and Rafael Dos Anjos.
I'm going to go with Max Holloway just because he's the champion, and I'll go 1A. I'll go with you on the Rafael Dos Anjos. His resurgence from 155, looking like he's one of those Brazilians that just he's getting past his time, to now, hey, you're gonna get a title shot at a higher weight class. You're looking stronger. You just went over a former champion in Robbie Lawler. You dominated him. Now, I don't know if Robbie was hurt, but let's not take nothing away. He's doing his thing at 170. So I would say 1A as well. And on the female side, I would say breakout would be Nico in the UFC. Nobody saw her coming off that show like that, and the girls admit it. They're like, we didn't know anything really about her. Which is crazy because you would think, because of the fact that she was a King of the Cage champion, she was fighting outside of New Mexico, you would think that she'd make some kind of noise somewhere. And good for her for not, because I think that's how she caught a lot of these girls off guard inside the Tough House. And then for showcasing it and winning the title, I think she's the breakout female fighter, and you got to give it to the 145-pound greatest women's fighter of all time, Chris Cyborg.
Definitely the wins over Evinger and what she did against Holly now. Cyborg, your UFC female fighter of the year. My local female fighter and breakthrough female fighter, definitely Nico. And I really had her neck and neck with Cyborg for even UFC female fighter of the year, thinking she took out Mata Ferry, Honchak, and Murphy, not to mention Ariel Beck. That's 4 top 10 wins in a year. It's incredible what Nico did. And then to do it with Roxanne being on such short notice, a complete stylistic change, blown away with what Nico Montano did this year.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think locally, and of course, she's the breakout fighter for the UFC. I think they need to tap into that Native American market, get her out there, get her start going to different tribes, different schools. They need that type of motivation in there. I think she can do wonders for the community. One, two, it's something the UFC can get behind marketing-wise. You know, we kind of saw it in a throwback fighter in Cody Ox-Wheeler here locally and how big he was getting. And then when he fight for the WEC, how they would travel for him to Las Vegas. And you'd hear the crowds chanting and just the goosebumps and the loudness, and just let her express herself. The warriors, and you know, you can look. I don't even know if I have them up even on YouTube, but maybe you might be able to find them. Type in Cody Ox-Wheeler, and you'll see the behind the scenes where he had drummers with him drumming while he's warming up in the back. Those are the type of things they need to promote, because those will draw new eyes, new attention, and she could be something really special moving forward into 2018.
Now, also 2018, event of the year, fight of the year, what do you think?
Event of the year, you're talking either 217, 218, and fight of the year. Honestly, and I know people will knock it, but I like the GSP fight because I put it into perspective this way. Look at Carlos taking just a year off, and he's a former welterweight interim champion. He's also the former WEC welterweight champion, and how far off he was. And GSP was, 4 years off? And came back, went up a weight. I understand you're saying, oh, well, that's Michael Bisping. Well, Michael Bisping is a pretty good, tough-as-nails, old-school fighter as can get. I mean, he's no slouch either. So I know people said, he hadn't picked him. But to see him go in there and dominate the way he did, and yeah, he was running out of gas, but he did his veteran thing, choked him out. I say good for the old guys, because usually the old guys get beat when they come back after that longer layoff. So I would say that's the fight of the year for me personally, because I'm an old school guy.
Now for me, fight of the year, I just don't want to throw it out there, but there's a couple great ones. I mean, you're talking about Landon Venata, David Tamor. Landon Venata versus Bobby Green. Both just slugfest. Derek Campos versus Brandon Gertz from Bellator. The bloodiest fight they've ever had. That was amazing. Justin Gaethje versus Michael Johnson. And just like at UFC 218, I think I'm split because fight of the year, it's so hard to differentiate between Justin Gaethje versus Eddie Alvarez. And on that same card, Alex Oliveira versus Yancy Medeiros. UFC 218 was spectacular, and those two fights were both on that same card, and I feel like one of them has to be fight of the year just because of the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, the blood and the knockdowns in those fights.
I would say, you know what, you picked a good choice. You're a younger guy than me. You're into today and now, and I just find it special when an older guy comes back and is able to do a performance the way he did.
It was a good fight. It was honestly surprising to me, but not so much. I mean, did I expect for GSP to win like that? No. But the minute I saw Michael Bisping just stepping backwards, I figured this is downhill for the English guy. This is going to be bad. He never moves backwards. As soon as he started moving backward, that was out of character, and yeah, shit for him. So for the year, just overall, not just UFC, MMA 2017 was a crazy year. We've talked about so many new promotions, like there's Invicta, there's Titan, there's Victory, all these ones are on Fight Pass. You got LFA merger, you've got PFL starting this year. MMA keeps growing, right, Sal? Do you think it was another positive year in 2017 for MMA?
It was a year of you went from the baby years to the toddler years. Now we're kind of moving into the preteen, the awkward stage, I think, of the years of MMA, where you're seeing the business come out of it, and you're seeing a lot more growth, but then you're also seeing a lot of people fade that don't know what they're doing in this business. And so you're in that awkward stage of, okay, are we going to grow or are we a niche sport? And that's what I think 2018 is going to answer for us. I think are we going to keep growing and skyrocketing, or are we going to plateau, and are we going to fall off? And that's what we're going to see in 2018.
This could be the year, you believe, where that finally comes to a forefront, a head-on collision, sport versus entertainment. Which direction do we really want to go in?
I think at the highest level, which is the UFC still, yes.
And I love the way you put that. That was fucking beautiful. You are correct. We are in the pre-teen stages of MMA's growth. It's kind of an awkward stage right now. Who are we? Where are we going? What are we doing?
Yep, I agree. I think that's the right now. Our ears are a little bit big. Our nose is a little bit awkward. We might stink a little bit because we're hitting our pre-teen ages.
Sal Mora, always fun talking to you, sir.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I appreciate it, and let's look forward to 2018.
Again, the Caged Minds 2017 awards are going to be up this week. CagedMinds.com. Check those out. Keep up with me on Instagram and Twitter. That's Caged Minds MMA, Caged Minds Combat Sports News on Facebook. Thanks for listening this week. And again, a shout out to Mac10. That's MMACK10. Check them out on Facebook while you're there too.